crowded. Their days with dark clouds are shrouded. They don't smile and they never will. Only vultures get to fill. Empty promises is what they hear. No running water from year to year. Hearts that no one desire. That if there is a Messiah, someday he hear their whispered prayer. Covered always bare and scanty. 10 people in a one-bedroom shanty. Forced to sell on the pavement. No vacancy, no employment. Kettle fire cracker from gunshot. Blood that flow when things get hot. Afraid to look out the window. To hear voices from the ghetto. Crying, Lord, Lord, crying, voices from the ghetto. Crying, Lord, Lord, voices from the ghetto. Help us, Father, Lord. Mothers just hold them head on the ball. And them woman stronger than a wall. Big pusher iron she daughter. Son in jail for manslaughter. Too bad for him fear them bad boys. No bail, that's the black man's choice. Like shadow say, hell. She little girl child belly start to swell. Some say life is a cycle, but don't draw she no circle. Yeah, will it all end on it time to tell. Outside the siren keep howling, inside your belly room growling. Police raid very often, Simpson measuring a coffin. One night in bed you're sleeping, next night is a wake that you're keeping. So you're praying to win the lotto, not to hear voices from the ghetto. Crying, 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 voices from the ghetto. Crying, Lord, crying, voices from the ghetto. We are not a forgotten people. Yo. With dented pride, they soldier on. Revolutions, fake politicians born. And often their tragic story brings a journalist's glory. No wonder they view the world with scorn. From since the day they're born, some call them rebels without a cause. These social victims of unjust laws, but yet they christen the heroes. Renegades, desperados, forever knocking on heaven's doors. Hear me? Steel band music shatters the silence. Harmony to conquer the violence. Big men run when cops approach, fighting for scraps with the cockroach. Young
Good evening, citizens and pedagogies. My name is Jomo Thomas. The program you're about to listen to is called Voices. This is the Voices program for November 4th, 2024. As per normal, we have a very good, enlightening educational program lined up for you this evening. In fact, we have Mr. Luke Brown, Rhodes Scholar, barrister, and solicitor, ULP candidate in 2010, 2015, 2020. We will have a good 2 hours of talk with him tonight. But before we do that, we would do as we normally do. I would read my column for last Friday, The column is called Reimagining, Reclaiming, and Renaming. And it goes like this. The celebrations marking the 45th anniversary of independence reveal some truths about our country. Among them are a strong sense of national pride, an abiding desire for national unity, and an undying hope that the government will do the right thing at the right moment for the right reasons. The colors of the independence flag were on full display in the week before Independence Day and on the day itself. Thousands of citizens, especially women and children, proudly wore the colors to reflect a sense of national belonging. As has become the norm, a significant section of those who journeyed to the park did not do so to hear Prime Minister Gonzalez, but in anticipation of his announcement of relief and benefits his government bestowed on Vincentians in his annual independence address. The independence celebration demonstrated that we have settled for pomp and ceremony, form over substance, a warmed over, rehearsed ritual in all things related to independence. Officialdom is definitively satisfied with flag independence, political independence, and a transactional approach to national development, rather than reimagining who we are as a people and who and what we can be or ought to become. In a word, a project of transformation. Imagine an SVG, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, at 45 years old, where most citizens cannot yet offer a clear and definitive explanation for independence. Imagine further that the population lacked the basic skills to articulate what an independent St. Vincent ought to be like. 45 years after lowering the Union Jack and hoisting a national flag, we still mutter, "Rule Britannia, rule." The symbols of Britishness continue to loom large. The grounds on which we assemble for independence is named after Queen Victoria, a British monarch who took her last breath in 1901. 45 years after we claimed independence, the decadence and moral depravity of French colonial authorities remain in blasphemous display at Petit Bedel, that playground they call, and we continue to know it as the Little Brothel. A reimagining of our nation demands an investigation of French atrocities against the men and women of that region. Understanding history, re-education, and a sense of pride requires removing the name Petit Bedel, a blemish on our landscape. 45 years after the British overlords packed their bags and departed these shores, our leaders retain an Anglo-Saxon trapping and have successfully trained most of us to be dependent Afro-Saxons. As a national project, we have settled for quote-unquote development on the margins. A building here, a monument there, a scholarship now, a house later, a promise, a smile, a hug, and a fleeting commitment to circle back. Reimagining our nation requires us to interrogate ourselves and ask difficult questions. Why are we this way 45 years after independence? Who benefits from our ignorance and lack of cultural awareness and political consciousness? Have we allowed ourselves to be lulled into insomnia and dormancy? Do we like it so? Or do we just not know better? In understanding our condition and reimagining a future befitting a genuine independent people, answering these questions, we should ask, what Chataye, Nellie Ibu, Samuel Sheriff Lewis, Martha Butt, and other giants of an earlier generation think of us? What would they say? A proper answer to these necessitates us knowing about the exploits and achievements of these heroes and sheroes. We claim Chief Chataye as our national hero, but do we know why he's elevated in such a rarefied space? Do we know of his decade-long struggle and sacrifice to protect our sovereignty and independence? Are our children taught about who smeared and killed him? Why is he called Garifuna? Who are the Kalinagos? Where are they now? The word genocide is in the news now regarding the criminal actions of the Israelis against Palestinian and Lebanese. 2 centuries ago, the British enslavers committed a similar genocide against our ancestors. 45 years after independence, no one bothers to remember Nellie Ibu, the enslaved African woman who was hanged because she executed a brutal, exploitative slave driver on a plantation in Mairo. Very few essentials know of this act of heroism, where 10 other females were hung for plotting their path to freedom. October 25th marked the 89th anniversary of the 1935 rebellion. Samuel Sheriff Lewis, aka Selassie, and Martha Butt were at the forefront of the struggles that led to the humanity of the majority of African population and universal adult suffrage. The struggles led by Sheriff Lewis did more to advance democracy, secure the right to vote and trade union organizing than all of our politicians combined, with the possible exception of E.T. Joshua. Sheriff and his band of rebels fought for the recognition of what the celebrated Caribbean intellectual called our sense of somebodyness. That Caribbean intellectual, our sense of somebodyness. Yet, no one remembers them. No hero's honor for Sheriff. Our quest for independence will be purely aspirational unless we tackle these fundamental issues and questions. If we fail to reimagine, rename, and reclaim the calls of an early generation of young radicals for genuine independence, people's ownership, and control, our call for genuine independence, people's ownership, and control will remain, to quote Emperor Haile Selassie, nothing but a fleeting illusion to be pursued but never attained. As is becoming clear by the day, our former colonizers are returning as investors. To avoid such a monumental tragedy, we must seize the time and use our moment as an occasion for education, consciousness raising, and history making. That was my piece for last week. Luke Brown, welcome.
Hi, Jomo. It's good to be on your program again. I think I am.
It's good to have you.
I think I'm becoming a very frequent guest of yours.
Yes, I wonder why.
I don't know
the truth.
I don't know if I could get frequent flyer miles for this.
The truth of the matter, Luke, is that if you can help me to get some of your ULP colleagues to come on, you probably would feature less frequently, but they seem to fear voices like the devil fear holy water.
Well, maybe that could be something that causes you to ask some self-searching questions.
Indeed. But seriously, I would love to get, because voices is what it is. I'm an equal opportunity critic. So if you come on, if you can play spin, well, more later run with ball. If you can play speed,
well,
Andy Roberts and those other guys, Michael Holden and those guys would come at you.
Well, fortunately, I am well prepared to face any form of attack.
It's good to hear that.
But look, fast bowling in my former days, I have to say. No,
I heard that some people thought that you had some promise and then you give it away to become a politician.
Well, I might describe this as a higher calling. Who knows? But
higher calling. We can all. St. Vincent can do with some higher. But seriously, you were a shining academic light. You became a Rhodes Scholar. You went away. You got the master's degree in statistics. Are you using any of the statistics at all?
Well, not in any official way, really. Still, obviously, very in tune and interested in matters of the economy and public affairs, and I think that is useful. I also have the opportunity from time to time to teach in an informal way, both mathematics and statistics. I mean, people don't generally like statistics very much or mathematics very much, so I think it's a useful part of my skill set in assisting them over the hurdle of the apparently insurmountable challenge that is mathematics education in this country, and it's an area that I'm eyeing to make an intervention in one way or the other, because I believe it is a critical need. in the country. And we could talk about that some more, Jomo, but I just
Yeah, we
wanted,
will. We will. Definitely, we will. I don't ask my questions by chance.
I just wanted though if you would allow me to make some comments in relation to your column,
Oh, sure.
because I mean
Feel free.
you've led with it, and we are obviously at this program in the immediate aftermath of our independence. Um, and I think that you mentioned some things which are pertinent. You in this column, I think that you are spot on target in terms of the renaming of some of our places. For instance, Victoria Park. It is perhaps quite a contradiction for us to be celebrating independence in a place that is named Victoria Park. I agree and I concur with that. I think that you were correct in what you have observed with respect to PT Bodel and maybe some of our other areas as well. Uh, and
Maurice Village, where I grew up.
and Murray's Village, where you grew up. I mean, I think you should be really holding up a banner at the entrance to that community every day until you get your wish
Yes,
of having
yes,
it
yes.
renamed. I think that you stifled yourself to some extent, though, in the expressions that were at the first few within the first opening within the opening sentences of your column when you spoke about a strong sense of national pride. I'm happy that you were able to bring yourself to acknowledging a strong sense of national pride on
To
your
bring
daily.
myself. It is not by chance. It is not by chance that I am where I am. I have always had. I left a lucrative law practice in New York to come back to an intellectual desert. That's a sense of
No,
national
well,
pride.
you may describe it as that, but when I look at, for instance, the number of scholarships which were recently unveiled as a part of our independence package, and when I reflect on the quality of the presentation.
That's about credentialization. That is not intellectual activity.
Well, I think that it is as a result of intellectual pursuits that these persons are receiving scholarships, and
Credential pursuit.
well, I'm not sure what causes you to make that type of distinction, but I also know that there is the core of intellectual discussion. You participate in it. Several other persons participate in it. We have some long-standing columnists, which I think are in the vanguard of this matter, including Renwick Rose, who was recently awarded by a diaspora group in New York, as well as Cuba. Interesting that he would be honored by, for to put it this way, an American and a grouping, and an America-based grouping, and a Cuba-based grouping within a short period of time. I suppose he was able to straddle the divide in a way. And Dr. Adrian Fraser, yourself, I mean, and I know that these, as well as, historians, for instance, Gary Michael Denny, who you introduced at a recent lecture, well, not so recent these days, is somebody who makes his contribution from time to time. In my own way, I've sought to also contribute to a spirit of intellectual discussion, to make St. Vincent quite in contrast to your suggestion of an intellectual desert and an intellectual oasis.
But but seriously, look. Let's not talk about this. You really think that St. Vincent is a fertile intellectual place? Seriously?
I, I do not think that it is a desert, and I think that
No, is it
we
fertile? Is it fertile for intellectual discourse?
I think there's fertile ground here, and
Huh?
there's fertile ground here, and there's the raw material. I think that there's not a sufficient amount of institutionalization um, of intellectualism, to put it simply.
You're talking around my question. I'm asking you a direct question.
I, well,
Do
I,
you
I
think that
answered the
St.
question
Vincent?
by saying I do not think that it is a desert, and that is a moot point.
Okay. So let's
That's a
move
moot
on.
point.
Look, what do you think? I read this column over, right? And I was struck. Like sometimes I go back and read my columns and pinch myself. and wonder how these words come. I was struck by
How
this
you came up with
sentence.
this work of art?
You know, I was struck by this sentence. As a national project, we have settled for development on the margin. A building here, a monument there, a scholarship now, a house later, a promise, a smile, a hug, and the fleeting commitment to circle back.
When you say you wonder how you come up with this formulation, I wonder if that formulation is really connected with the reality.
Oh, you don't think so? Okay.
Are we really in St. Vincent and the Grenadines experiencing development at the margins? Is that how you would describe the state of affairs in a country which has, apart from Guyana, the highest economic growth rate in the Caribbean? And we know that Guyana is an outlier in this matter because of the discovery of oil. Is that some? I mean, I'm wondering because I also consult very often the material from Professor Justin Robinson, who is in a good position to comment on the state of our national affairs. And I could say that your column, as read here, I mean, much as you've made some points of reflection, is in contrast or stark contrast with the
Professor Robinson column.
like Professor Robinson. I mean, he definitely gave a different image of St. Vincent as being a country which is really on the move and on the march. And
what did he say? What did he say that evidences that St. Vincent is on the move and on the march? Tell us, because I read the column.
He said a few things.
Tell us.
He said, for instance, that we are, to put it simply, playing.
No. Quote him.
If you want me to quote him, then I could quote him.
I'm sure you can.
He spoke about the fact. Let me see. He spoke about the role that we played in peacemaking in recent matters.
And that is a sign that we are not doing development on the margins?
No, and that is a sign that St. Vincent, and first of all, I always go back to something I heard said by the Secretary General of the United Nations. He says that a country is not judged by its size, but by its contribution to the welfare of mankind. So it's a contribution.
Hold on one second, right? Time is precious, and we have 2 hours to talk a lot. So I brought a sentence about development on the margin, and you said Dr. Robinson painted a different picture. So I'm asking you, because if we engage in diplomacy,
you want me to quote him directly?
Yes, if we engage in diplomacy at one time or another, that is not a reflection of development.
Okay, well, I'm just talking about our position within the League of Nations and our contribution to the welfare.
No, but that is not a sign of that doesn't dispute the fact about the development on the margin. That's the point I'm making.
But in relation to development, I mentioned the fact that we are in a position.
No, quote him, quote Robinson.
I'll quote Robinson now, but I was going back to something I myself said earlier about our economic growth rates.
But there's no need to say it again. You said that we are second. We are galloping second only to
Looking at Robinson's statement, he said the Argyle International Airport, for instance, a beacon of ambition, opens your arms to the world, inviting travelers to marvel at the unspoiled beauty of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Your economy, though small, pulses with life and possibility. In the social realm, you have stood tall. The doors to education, once narrow, have been flung wide open, welcoming more of your sons and daughters to learn, grow, and dream beyond your shores. Now, these are very solid points and pertinent points, because Joma, I hold with you, actually, that we are in this country pursuing a particular vision for development. And that vision was centered around, first of all, bolstering our economic competitiveness through certain critical investments. And having bolstered our economic competitiveness, I think we are reaping the fruits of our labor, labor being an operative word there. So, and there's much.
What are the evidence to indicate that we are reaping fruits?
Well, the evidence that we're reaping fruits is made manifest in the very thing that I've been mentioning a few times in the past 5 or so minutes: our economic growth. We see this materializing, And
Let me ask you.
eh?
Let me ask you this: do you
Yes,
travel across the Caribbean at all?
it's a rhetorical question. I
No, it's
have
not a
been.
rhetorical question.
Well, yeah, because it's rhetorical because I think that you know that in an official capacity, I've been
No, but
to
you have not been in official capacity in 4 years.
well, whether or not, well, in an official government capacity, perhaps I haven't been in 4 years, but I've traveled very often to
Okay, so you
almost
still travel. You still
all
travel.
Caribbean
So
countries.
when you do your travels across the Caribbean, because I do as well. If you were to go to Saint Lucia, Dominica, or Grenada, well, I haven't gone to Dominica in about 7 years. But if you go to Grenada, Dominica, or Barbados, or Trinidad, or Antigua, you get the feeling that St. Vincent is galloping ahead of them or is rivaling them for development.
Well, first of all, I don't like how you've discriminated against Dominica because you said you haven't been there for
No, I
seven
said I
years.
have not been there for in about seven
I
years.
know, so I consider that to be discrimination against Dominica.
Dominica is quite beautiful.
and,
I know you have some roots there.
and unlike you, I have been to Dominica within the past 2 to 3 weeks. So
Great, very nice.
and I've been elsewhere as well, and I get the impression that we are moving along. It's
Well,
not a
every
matter
country
of
is moving. Most countries are moving along,
yeah,
except
but
except
clearly
for those that are being targeted for strangulation. So, for example, Cuba is being strangled strangled. Venezuela, Zimbabwe, Iran, and so on. But
and from traveling and from my own knowledge of the local reality, I am of the view that St. Vincent is doing well and is doing comparatively well in
you think we're
relation,
doing well? Okay.
and that is reflected in the official information for economic growth and other
But
pertinent
Luke, you are a statistician. You have
Mhm.
some economic understanding. This whole notion of economic growth has little to do with economic development.
Well, I don't know if it has little to do
Would
with
you
it.
agree with that?
Well, I don't think so. I don't think it has little to do with economic development. As a statistician, I know that it is not a perfect measure of standard of living, and there is no perfect measure of standard of living. But if we're talking about economic development and development in general, you might say that the world has one real, almost universal measure of standard of living, and that is the Human Development Index. And even when you go to the Human Development Index, you are going to have as one of its substantive components GDP per capita connected to economic growth. So it is not divorced from the conversation at
No, we're
all.
not talking about what is divorced. We are talking about this whole thing about economic growth. For example, you have seen where galloping economic growth in a place like China or Singapore or Taiwan has or South Korea have pushed those countries ahead. Let's take St. Vincent, right?
Mhm.
We are 25, almost 25 years in on the ULP administration, but we haven't touched in any significant way critically important areas like poverty or unemployment. In fact, they have grown under
Well,
ULP.
I don't know the source of your information about poverty and unemployment growing in our country. I know that you repeat those arguments from time to time in your columns because I follow it very very closely. And the arguments are
Contrary numbers.
well. The first of all, I don't think that we know. I don't think that there is available information that allows us to
Why
pronounce
is
on it
that? Why is
in
that?
definitive terms.
Why
Well,
is that?
it's not for me to know the reasons, but the issue is
It's
that
not for you to do the reason.
it's not available. And
Why is it not available?
what I could tell you is that the last completed poverty assessment in this country shows that there was a substantial decline
When
in
was that? When was that?
the
2008.
2000 and between I
Eight.
think it was 2008. It
Yeah.
showed a substantial decline in
Yes.
indigent poverty. It showed a substantial decline in the general level of poverty, and I
No, no,
await
it didn't show
any.
us. It went for the 2008. numbers showed we went from 37 to 30%, and we went from 26% to 2.8% in indigents.
Right.
But that's 16 years on.
So
We are
that's
16 years on now.
It is true that we might be hopeful that there will be updated information available, but on the basis of that report, there was positive movement against poverty in this country. And
But is there any evidence that that positive movement has been sustained over the last 16 years?
I don't see any reason why it would not have been sustained, because the way in which you tackle poverty is by doing something very basic and simple, and it is by providing opportunities for employment. Well, first of all, before we even get on the strict employment part of it, we have to look at education, because really and truly, the most important thing in relation to fighting poverty anywhere is your policy in education. It is an anti-poverty program. If the more people who get secondary school, who complete secondary, if a person completes secondary school, that person is more likely to have a future out of poverty. If a person,
well, if the economy allows it.
No, it's
but
not.
Look, you know well.
All things being equal,
you know
education
that
is important.
Unlike previous years, at least unlike my primary school years, we are having situations now in St. Vincent because you laud education. I think it's laudable in some respects, particularly the advances in tertiary opportunities. But at the fundamental level, at the ground level, we have more illiterate young people now than when I was going to school, in primary school.
I do not think that is true. I don't know what the basis of your statement. I really don't know. If you have any reports that you could point to for my own guidance and information, then fine. But that based on my own observation.
Look, talk to the teachers, talk to the teachers union, talk to teachers in the schools. I'm sure you have friends who are teachers. Talk to the Minister of Education, for example. If they're honest with you, talk to the official in the Ministry of Education.
But
talk to your mom, who was a long-standing teacher, about the anecdotal story she's hearing.
I'm happy that you recognize the kind of environment I grew up in relation to education. And the truth is that
You're stonewalling me, man.
No, I am saying to you that I do not agree with you about the idea that there are more illiterate people in this country today. It's quite frankly, it's ridiculous.
Then when I was going to school.
I know that's the point. When you were going to school,
look. When I was going to school, let me give you an example.
When
I was going to school, hold on a second. When I was going to school in primary school in Roman Catholic school, there might have been one person whom we used to call grandpa or grandma who was staying back. Now teachers are telling you that entire classes cannot read or write, or cannot read at their grade level. Haven't you heard that?
Which schools are you talking about? Because I haven't heard that anywhere.
And never heard that?
I haven't heard that anywhere, and I interact with a lot of schools on an ongoing basis. It is true that there are some issues with particular children from time to time, but it has never been brought to my attention, and I dare say it does not exist, where there are whole classes who are unable to read. And Jomo, in your time when you were going to school, there was it was a very different scenario altogether. First of all,
in what sense?
In the sense that only a very limited number of children were even able to achieve the completion of primary school education, far less get into secondary school.
No, you're conflating issues. Don't do that. We are not talking about who got a chance to go into to secondary school. I am talking about in my primary school days at Roman Catholic school. And I spent 15 years there because unlike many students, I didn't go into what we call now the CPE and went to the school at 11. I spent 15 years at the Catholic school, did school even and then the priest was sorry for me. He said, there's no way this boy is performing so well, and didn't get to, and then they allowed me to go to St. Martin's. But the point I don't want you to confuse and conflate the issue by talking about opportunities, because you would admit, and you have celebrated someone like JP Eustace, whose programs put a lie to the story that only 38% or 40% of the students used to go into secondary school.
I don't think it's no.
Because many people were able to go to Timmy Richards School, they were able to go to Doc School.
That's why it was 40% and not 20%. That's why. That's why. I mean,
Luke, don't play with our audience, man. Don't play with our audience.
No. I'm very honest about it. You could imagine that a private man had more schools than the government.
No. I could understand that, but I'm saying. I'm saying
that if it were not for
let me clarify something. Let me clarify something here.
A far smaller secondary school graduate population.
One of our listeners caught me out there. He said, Jomo, you actually spent 15 years in primary school. What I intended to say is that I spent 10 years. I went in at 5 and I left at 15. Thank you, Morgan, for picking that up.
Well, no, I was prepared to concede that you spent a very long time there. I understand. I was prepared to concede in the absence of any other information to the contrary. Why would I doubt your authority on yourself?
I am sure you shouldn't, right?
And now that you have made such a glaring mistake about yourself, I'm sure that you could make some mistakes about the economy.
I am not infallible. I just try to be a student of these things. Let's move on though. You mentioned that you still use your mathematical, statistical, economic foundations for things of national import. Are you familiar with what has been happening with loans from the World Bank? Are you familiar with the fact that in August of 2022, the government got $51 million from the World Bank to build a hospital? And Finance Minister Camilo Gonzalez said that they got 20 million. So that's $71 million. And he also said that in about a few months, we were expected to get the other 13 million to make it 64. So that's 84 million. And then recently, the government announced that they got another $63 million from the World Bank. So that's $147 million US. And now they said that they're going to use that for burial relief. Now, you as someone with some financial, economic, statistical training, have you paid attention to issues of debt and how that may impact on our economy?
Yeah, of course, I paid attention to issues of debt. I'm not up to date on the figures that you're quoting, and you will know that there has been a different approach in relation to the financing of the hospital. But I definitely pay attention to that, and I pay so much attention to it that I know that you should not attempt to analyze debt figures in isolation. In fact, I also saw that in one of your recent columns, because you only read your most recent on this program. You on the 13th of September, you had a column in which you looked at the budget and you mentioned some material about debt. And when we talk about debt and debt to GDP ratio, and we try to, ultimately, we always want a situation where our debt is manageable, and we come up with certain benchmarks against which we could judge if our debt is manageable. And I think that there is the idea that the level of our debt to GDP right now is about 90%, and that it is going to decline over a period of time up to 2035 to a 60% level, and that is seen as being an acceptable place to be. Having said that, the debt to GDP ratio of Japan is 245%.
America is how much?
That I don't want. Let me just see if I could pull up the contemporary, the up-to-date
information. Pull up America.
But
Take your time and pull it up so that we can brew it out the water.
okay, I go
The debt
into
to GDP ratio.
debt to
So Japan is
GDP.
245.
Japan is 245. Let me just see if I could find something on America here for our general enlightenment. I mean, these things are important. Budget and the economy, and you put in here and you look for JP and Japan.
Well, while you look at it, look, it's very high, but nobody would make a serious argument
But
about
yeah,
debt
it's
to
very high.
GDP.
I don't have the precise thing, but even to broaden the discussion a bit from just simply America, a couple years ago when I was
No, you
doing
said
some
Japan.
research,
I was just America is even higher. That's why I
yeah,
asked you to go to America.
there we go. But and generally speaking, a couple years ago when I was doing some research on the debt to GDP ratio, I came across the information that the gross government debt of developed countries now stands at an average of 108% of GDP, according to the latest Geneva report, which was written by a panel of senior economists. Now, that is some time ago. So, this is for developed countries. So we have to just use the debt to GDP ratio for what it is as an index, but also know that we have to consider other important factors. I also happen to believe that we don't put enough emphasis on the debt service ratio because the debt to GDP ratio is all well and good, but the debt service ratio is what I think really brings things into perspective because the debt is going to be paid by government revenue. So what you have to try to figure out is what is the burden on government
Let me
revenue of this
let's
debt.
look at this. Let's look at it this way, Luke. Based on the current debt, which is what about $3 billion in St. Vincent now.
No, I don't.
Do
It's not.
you
It's not
do,
there. It's not
do
three
you
billion.
know? Do you?
It's
It's
not three
not three
billion
billion.
dollars. I think the.
How much is
I
how much is it?
think it's probably
Based,
in.
based on the debt, which is about $3 billion now. Do you know?
The debt is
Based
not
on
$3 billion now, as far as I'm
in
aware.
you are not aware. That's the problem. Based on that debt, do you know how much of each dollar we generate goes towards paying the debt?
Well, I think that the debt service ratio, and I have these are not things that I really have to guess about. Um,
Remember, you're the numbers man, eh?
the debt service ratio a couple years ago was around 31%, which is to say that about
Which
30
year was that, Luke?
that
You're
was.
pulling that out of your hat, man.
I'm not pulling it out of my hat.
Where did you get that information from?
What's wrong with you, Jomo? That was, I think, in maybe around 2017. I'll give you the precise
Luke,
particular.
you pulled it out of your hat.
I didn't
The
put
debt, the debt, the
Jomo.
debt to GDP ratio in St. Vincent is more than 60 cents out of every dollar. And in fact, it's higher than that, but I
No,
can't
it's not.
recall.
It's not, Jomo. It is not. I don't know. You are pulling things out of the hat.
No, no,
You
no.
understand?
I've seen the numbers before.
And I have studied these numbers, including during a period of time when I debated the budget in Parliament. I mean, this is something.
I listened to you debating the budget. I can't remember you ever talking about debt
Well,
to GDP.
what I'm telling you
Services 21%.
is that the debt
But
service ratio
I
was
don't want I
in
don't
that
want
ballpark.
us I don't want us to talk ahead of our listeners, above the head of our listeners. So
No, not
I
at
I,
all.
I am not
Well,
going
so I
to
want to make it simple for the listeners because
make it simple for us. Make it simple for us.
in that debt service ratio, which might sound esoteric and so on, I'm just simply talking. You go to the bank, you want a loan, the bank tells you that you can't get a loan for which the monthly repayment is more than 40% of your salary. So you make $1,000, they don't want you to have to repay them more than $400 per month. And if that is the benchmark set by the bank, and if you use that benchmark which is set by the bank and apply it to government, as of the most recent information I have, you have the government paying
What
30%
ridiculousness you're saying? Are you
of.
saying that banks use the same benchmark that they use for citizens for the government?
No, no, I'm
Come on,
saying
Lou.
I didn't say that. How could you interpret
You
when I said
just said
that?
if the, you
I
just
am
said if
saying,
we use the
I
same
am saying,
benchmark.
I am saying that a bank in dealing with its customers or clients
I heard you.
as a benchmark to say that you don't want the customer to pay back more than 40% of their salary or their income in debt servicing to service the debt. And I'm
And
saying,
you
and
said
I'm saying equally, the government could have for itself a benchmark of not paying
would
more than,
have.
yes, the government could have, it could have as its benchmark, if the government were to be abiding by that same benchmark of not paying more than 40% of its revenue in debt, we will be in a good position. That's all I'm saying.
No, but you started by disputing. The question is not whether the government could be in a good position or not. The fact of the matter is that the debt in St. Vincent has been galloping. And as someone, I think it was Lennox Lampkin said, we produce little or nothing. So if the debt is galloping at the pace with which it is galloping and growing, and we are not producing a lot, then it means that soon, if not now, we now have a debt that is unsustainable. Would you agree with that?
I don't know if the debt is galloping, so I'm going to, so the very premise of the
You
statement,
don't think the debt is galloping?
I don't think it is galloping to the point of being in any way out of control.
Look,
And
we have
that's
borrowed.
one thing. And the other thing is our economy is growing, Jomo. I think that that is very plain for everybody to see. Our economy is growing. And if our economy grows, the government revenue is going to grow, and the ability of the government to service its debt is going to be in a reasonably good condition.
Not necessarily, because we may have national demands. As you can see, the school that your mom spent a significant amount of time is in a state of disrepair now. The Thomas Sanders School is in a state of disrepair. Many schools and hospitals and clinics across the country, I heard the Prime Minister says we have like about 31 or 32 clinics or something like that to repair. So even if you take your argument that we are growing and that we are generating more money, I think 2 months ago the government said that we generated I think just $113 million more than we did the previous year. But if we have more demands, we are borrowing more money, we have more debt, then we are not going to be able to do what you are saying we can do.
Right. So what is necessary is for us to make sure that we have a manageable debt situation, and is my thesis that we have a manageable debt situation, and I'm prepared to defend that thesis in paper.
So break it out for us. Help us to understand your thesis. In the last year, we have borrowed hundreds of millions of dollars. You would agree with that?
We have borrowed to finance.
You want me to itemize some of them for you?
Well, you've done that in.
You want me to itemize some of them for you because you seem not to know.
You've done that in different places, and you've even done that earlier on this program already.
So you don't want me to repeat it.
So
as a good barrister, you would know the art is to repeat and to repeat.
No, I wouldn't want you to use the precious time which you said is limited for that purpose. But what I'm saying is we could study this matter, and we could come to a conclusion on the sustainability, or how, if our debt is manageable. My thesis is that it is manageable, and I could present a paper to that effect.
No, not present a paper. Give us the short version. Give us the synopsis. Give us what you call it? The executive summary. Give us the executive summary.
I just give you the synopsis that our debt service ratio, the percentage of government revenue which is used to service the debt, is under 40%. And that,
so you have now got up by 10%.
No, it's under 31% based on some information from the past, 31%. So it's under 40%. I was just using the 40% benchmark there as a general cover. And that is the basis of the thesis. Now, we might go back and review the situation and update the information to include more recent developments. But that, in a nutshell, is what there is to it.
Our friend Mr. Delicia is asking, debt grows, our GDP is stagnant. But GDP has little or nothing to do with debt, my friend.
No,
we grow a national debt, and for example.
But the GDP is not stagnant.
No. The GDP is not stagnant. The GDP is growing, but the GDP has little or no impact on unemployment, on poverty, as we have seen over the last 30 years, 25 years.
That is your view. But
but look.
I mean, in the last program that we did together, I think we exchanged our views on the question of poverty and unemployment, and I'm sure that we are still of the same opinion.
Well, this is not a conversation. This is not a conversation necessarily between me and you. This is a conversation between me, you, and the audience.
I understand.
You better try to convince the audience.
And I believe that the audience may have been almost the same as the audience on the earlier occasions.
What do you think?
And we did exchange our views on poverty. We did exchange our views on unemployment. I think that there is no definitive information. I spoke to you about my anecdotal view and even my deeply held view about on those subjects, and they haven't changed. And the time will come when I will probably be able to crystallize some of those thoughts in the present when I obtain more information and present them to you. But in your, if I may say, Donjomo, one of the things that you mentioned in your column, which I think is worthy of amplification, since you use it as the motivating piece for the program, has to do with.
No, it wasn't a motivating piece of the program. It was my last column, which is what I normally do before.
And when you read your last column as the opening gambit in a program like this, I think it is worthy of using it to inform some of the discussion, because I'm very interested in the history of the political history of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and in particular the 1935. I don't know if to call it riot or uprising.
Not a riot.
I know.
Uprising, rebellion.
I know that we're very particular with words, which is why I couched
riot
my statement as it was couched.
A riot. That was righteous indignation. That is not a riot.
And how that led to universal adult suffrage in this country. And I think that.
You don't think it did?
No. I think it did, of course.
Because you would agree. But okay, so since you want to go there,
there's some things on which we agree with
me.
I was taking out some common ground.
Would you agree with me? Would you agree with me then, since you see that as common ground, that Samuel Sheriff Lewis, and I always get these names, and my friend time and time again tells me, Mr. Borgin, he says, you're calling the woman's name wrong. He says, Borgin, what's her name again? Oh, he says, Jomo, the woman's name is Borta Mutt and not Martha Butt. I always get the name wrong. And Borgin always corrects me, whether we are talking on the street or as we saw here. Yeah. Would you agree? Because you never talked about Samuel Sheriff Lewis as a possible national hero, who I'm absolutely convinced is a national hero. But in my column, I talked about the fact that the uprising of 35 led to a greater emergence of George McIntosh. They eventually led to universal adult suffrage and voting of the masses of the people. Led to the whole concept, what Rex Nettleford called the somebodyness of our people. And in that sense, Samuel Sheriff Lewis and his band of revolutionaries did more, with the possible exception of Joshua, than any of the other politicians in terms of the political democratic advance of the broadening of the democratic space in St. Vincent and Grenadines. Would you agree with that or not?
Well, I see you advance that. I don't agree with it, but I have all. I also.
Who you think did more to broaden the democratic space of the politicians?
I haven't really given Sheriff's contribution in
No. Give
that much
whose
thought.
contribution you have looked at. Who did more than Sheriff?
Well,
You said you don't agree with it.
I just look at the 1935 uprising as a holistic affair that led to greater political rights and freedoms.
Who did more?
And
Which politician did more to broaden the democratic space?
but the question you might ask is I mean, like I say, I haven't studied Sheriff Lewis. The question I would ask is the extent to which he was the anchor and the architect of the 1935 uprising itself.
Do you know anything about? Well, you say you haven't studied 1935. There was no bigger. No one loomed larger than Samuel Sheriff Lewis.
Yeah. You would suggest that Macintosh didn't loom larger than him?
Macintosh didn't play a part. In fact, Macintosh condemned. He did not play a part. Let me listen. Let's do this. Let's do this. You know what Macintosh did? Macintosh condemned the uprising, but the British, in their snobbishness, did not believe that African people like me and you had the skill, the intelligence, the organizational ability, and wherewithal to sustain an uprising in the way in which Sheriff and them did. And consequently, they blamed Macintosh. And that is why the case, that is why the case collapsed, because when they went into the court, they had nothing to pin on Macintosh, because Macintosh actually condemned 1935.
That's an interesting school of thought, and I would.
It's not a school of thought; it's a fact.
I'll consult the history book some more, and then I'll be able to perhaps respond to your
Dr. Adrian Fraser wrote a book on what he called the 1935 riots. Evidently, he's not a fan of Sheriff Lewis, because when I herald Sheriff Lewis as a hero, he wrote something saying that it was spontaneous and Sheriff doesn't deserve. But
there we go. You know, so there's I mean, he
think about it. He
does agree with you on some things, though. He does agree with you on some things. I noticed that he amplified a large section of one of your recent columns in his own right.
Yes, I saw that too. But think about it this way, Luke. Go back to the 1930s, right? Go back to the 1930s and look at all of the persons who led uprisings across the region and see where they sit in the national pantheon of the countries across the region. And then ask yourself, why is it that is not the case in St. Vincent and the Grenadines? It's prejudice against our people. People that look like me.
Why would there be a special prejudice here that does not exist elsewhere?
Well, that's the question.
And if
interrogate that.
And you've just said that a historian who studied the 1935 riots or uprising and who wrote about it said that it was spontaneous and has a different view from you.
Class prejudice.
Oh, come on. That wasn't on display in the column when he amplified almost everything you said.
Oh, Lord. So because that wasn't on display, that means that that class prejudice couldn't explain why?
I mean, people could have a different point of view without it being...
Yeah, but we have to look for basis. When we have a different point of view, Luke, we have to look for the basis for that point of view. Anyway, we're at the top of the hour, and I don't want us to be detained any further. Someone wanted to know if you are still hunting, if you're still in the huntings.
You mean
I'm talking politics here now.
For dares, for ducks?
Electoral
politics. Yes, of course, I'm still, as they say, soldiering on. in East Kingstown. I think that you know that I have a passion for what I'm doing, and I intend to continue working on behalf of the people in the communities that make up this constituency, and for the benefit of the wider nation as well. You know, I see, and people might wonder what's the relevance of politics and what's the relevance of public office. And the truth is, the government and elected office in general. By the way, Joe, I'm surprised that you are here in St. Vincent. I thought that you might be voting in the United States of America, at least.
There's you can send in your ballot, Luke. You should know
No,
that.
you can, but did you?
I don't know. No, you said you're surprised I'm here. I'm saying you can send your ballot in.
I know, and then I asked another question, and you're stonewalling.
No, I'm not stonewalling. There's nobody that is voting my vote who was in the ticket.
Well,
Voter supporters of genocide, and to me, genocide is a baseline. If you can, if you can, if you can, no, there's no such thing called a lesser of evil.
There's no
evil
such
is
thing?
evil. No such thing called lesser of evil.
Of course, there are lesser evils and greater evils.
Well, that's an oxymoron.
I am not so sure about that.
I am sure.
But I'm sorry that you.
What kind of moral universe could you be in to say, well, Harris presides over the death of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians and Lebanese? Bush says, not Bush, Trump says, well, I'll kill them all. Which one is there a lesser evil there?
Well, I'm not talking about the matter in that sense. I'm talking about a lesser evil of who is better for America. I mean, obviously, I don't have any vested interest in the question.
You should, because who controls America controls the world.
That might well be the case, but I am not a part of the electoral process in the United States. The Americans will determine their fate. So I wouldn't say that I am not a person who I don't consider myself to be an interested party, but right. that is a different matter altogether. Mm-hmm. But the truth is, when you come to politics, you're not asking if there is an ideal candidate. You're asking about who is the better.
I hear you, but we are talking. Genocide is a baseline. You can't excuse that. You can't excuse it. But you said you were interested, but it's clear, even from your boss, your political boss, that he's thinking about going elsewhere.
Well, I don't know what makes that so clear to you, sir. But
people, the name of Luther McIntosh, rep in New York, is being touted as somebody who may come to contest.
Well, that might or might not be the case. That is, I've heard many persons
that sounds like a concession.
That I might or might not. I've heard the name of many persons being called in relation to this constituency, and I'm not going to go on the basis of name calling or speculation.
Let me ask you this: Do you believe that whenever the next elections are called, Luke Brown's name would be on the ticket for the Unity Labour Party?
Well, certainly, if it be the will of the people in the constituency.
So you don't think it has nothing to do with the political bosses who run the ULP?
Well, it has to do with the candidate selection procedure, which is applicable to all constituencies, and you are very familiar with the process and the procedure, and we'll go through it. We'll go through it.
But do you want to run again?
I don't leave behind unfinished tasks, and as I mentioned earlier, it's my intention to soldier on and to continue working in the people's interest in this constituency.
Having lost 3 times on the trot, do you think you have a better chance this time with the ULP going for a 6th term of winning?
Well, I think I have a better chance of. I think I am a better in a better position to represent people. Let me put it like that, on the basis of the experience I've gained, and where I am in terms of my own career, and just reflecting on the elections. The If you look at them, and if you look below the surface, you'd see that in every election I've given a good account of myself. In the 2010 election, which was my debut outing, we had a particular.
We're not talking here about accounting. Nobody remembers that Jomo Thomas lost by 118 votes.
Well,
So the account of yourself is not.
No, well, if nobody remembers that, perhaps we're not looking at the deeper analysis. The point is, though, that in every elections, and this is an exceptional fact in East Kingston, which you might say historically is the most difficult constituency for the Labour Party on mainland St. Vincent. But notwithstanding that, in every elections, we have gained ground in this constituency. We've increased the number of votes that we have received, including in the last election when there was a strong swing against the Unity Labour Party. And I don't think that is something that could be ignored.
Did you narrow the margin of defeat in 2020 as opposed to 2015?
There was a widening of the margin by around 98 votes. Where
how many votes?
About 98 votes.
98.
And the difference now, I think, is about 200. The difference in margin is 247. If you look at the fact of history, you'd see that in one election cycle, I was able to increase or decrease the margin by over 300 votes. So this is something which I think is within strike.
It's doable. Even if your party is going for sixth term.
Even if the party is going for sixth term, I mean, I concentrate on the organization in the constituency. I think that we have a very strong organization at the constituency level. We have a very active constituency office, and and I've done this in a way that shows my commitment even during a period of time when I was overseas studying. I left the government. I didn't have that source of income, but it was still important enough for me to keep our offices open and to keep serving people.
You have some good godfathers?
Well, our fathers. But
one thing is certain, Luke, you have at least one supporter. I'm not sure if she's in East Kingston, but she says East Kingston loves Luke Brown. That's from Marissa Delicio.
Oh boy, that's something to smile about.
I am sure.
At 9:09 in the night, and yeah, I have a relationship, a strong relationship with these people. I'm not going to, Jomo. The truth is, I know East Kingston would have been a difficult proposition. I didn't expect it to be a walk in the park or anything that happens overnight. But I'm just prepared to stick it out with the people in the constituency with whom I feel I have a natural connection. I have never lived anywhere else in my life. I've spent periods of time studying overseas, and they might have. It's just I'm going to stick it out here, and the people who have shown such great confidence in me, and the people who have supported me over the years, I'm not going to let them down by walking away when we might be as in that acres of diamond story within touching distance of the gold.
Well, so you can't beat that kind of optimism.
No, you just gotta work and gotta remain faithful to the cause, and I trust fate.
But you have a Sisyphean task, right?
Sorry?
You have a Sisyphean task.
In what sense, sir?
You know the story of Sisyphus, right? Trying to push that big stone up the hill.
Well, the truth is, when Christ was crucified and buried in the tomb, the stone was rolled up.
Do not make that analogy. You will be smited.
No, I'm
Do
just
not
saying.
make that analogy.
I'm just saying that however difficult the task might be, if
That
Christ is
task
with
wasn't
you,
difficult for Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is God.
I know. So therefore, what is this task, which is his task?
So I take it to be saying that you're God-like.
No, you take me to be saying that I'm God fearing. God fearing.
Look, well, do
Yes, sir.
you were talking, we were talking about economics, we were talking about debt, we were talking about the economy.
By the way,
Can you offer, I haven't heard it yet from any UL people. And part of it is that they don't come here. And I would really like them for you to come here. But since I have you here, do you think in good conscience the port project can be justified?
yeah.
Help us to just justify it for us.
I know that you have some issues surrounding the port project. I saw you raise a couple of those issues in your columns, including the question about the amount of money which
And
was paid by for
yeah.
the sand and so on. Your curiosity abounds, but yes, it is justified. And first of all, it is justified as a matter of public investment. And I think that the prime minister and the government is motivated by something which he has actually said on a couple of occasions. Michael Spence, who is a Nobel laureate in economics and who is a co-author of the Growth Report, he makes a point about the importance of public investment. Now, I have heard that point echoed almost in the same terms by Michael Bloomberg, whatever your view may be of
Remember,
him.
I had a gentleman, an Australian economist on here a few weeks ago. I don't know if you had a chance, who made the same point about the importance of public investment.
The importance of public investment.
Yeah.
Bloomberg made the point, and you make this public investment to increase your competitiveness. And I think that the investment in the port is really about increasing our competitiveness.
Help us to understand how we increase our competitiveness by building a port.
Well, we increase our competitiveness by building a port in the sense that there's going to be a more efficient port available.
There's going to be a what?
A more efficient port available to.
What makes the current ports inefficient?
Well, perhaps its size.
Perhaps.
Well, no, I'm just giving. I'm not. This is not.
That's rather circumspect. Perhaps.
No, I'm not speaking in any way that is not modest. I could go
No,
on.
you have to speak. You have to speak to justify the new port.
Yeah,
Of
so
$650 million.
I'm talking. I'm saying this, but we could get the justification for the project from the authorities. But the size of the port could make it inefficient. If you have a great extent of congestion and you have.
Is there any evidence that there's congestion at our ports now?
Yes, there's evidence of that.
Where?
And in addition to
Where?
that,
Where?
at the port.
Where? What's the evidence of the congestion at the port?
Well, you should just perhaps try to subject yourself to the process of getting items cleared from the port, and you will have a better sense.
Yes, I've done that many times. When my family members are grateful enough to send me something, I go to the port and get it.
And I'm sure that is going to.
I get it in less than an hour.
I'm sure you've seen evidence of congestion, but I mean, that is my view of it. And
no, Luke, but Luke, don't do that to us. You can't just tell us about your view of it. You have to give us more. Here's an investment.
What I'm saying, ultimately, without
here's an investment that is $650 million, and I heard Finance Minister, I think it's either the PM or Finance Minister Gonzalez saying that it may cost us as much as the international airport, which they say was $750 million. And you just offer that as a justification for a modern port?
What I'm offering as the justification is that it is going to increase our economic competitiveness.
That's what you say, but how?
And it is going to increase our efficiency. That is the justification. And
How?
the matter of the particulars, I do not have at hand to present to you, but that is the justification for the port project. An increase in our economic competitiveness and our increase.
That's the fourth time you're saying that. That's the fourth
Right.
time you're saying that. Don't say it again. Don't say
Well,
it again unless
if
you
you
tell
ask
us
the
more.
question again, I'll say it again.
Don't say it again because look, tell us. You're a national. You live right there at East Kingstown. You can look over at Kingstown. What is it that we are doing in our productive economic sector that helps us to understand that with a modern port, we would be exporting more things? What is it you see us exporting?
Let me ask you this question before we even reach there.
No, don't ask me any question. Answer my questions.
What is the value of the land that was reclaimed to put that port?
I don't know. So you tell us.
But would you mind hazarding a guess?
No, I won't want. I don't.
What is the value of 16 acres of land in Kingston that was opened up for this port project?
Well, what I know, it may well be causing some serious environmental problem because we are blocking up a natural harbor that has been there for centuries.
There have been
environmental. Some people would tell you that one of the fallout of the first reclamation is the destruction of the beach at Edinburgh. But people don't look at it. Don't look at those things in that way.
People look at it, and there's been extensive environmental studies in relation to this port project.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know that.
You have seen them?
I've seen them? I've seen and I've read the reports.
Could you share them with me? Would you be willing to share them with me?
I could share them with you.
No. I don't mean now. I mean share them with me tomorrow or day after tomorrow or next week or so on.
Yes, sir. I've read the environmental studies about the port.
Okay.
And
I would love that.
And when we approach in the port, the first question that I think should be asked is really, what is the value of the land? The value of the land itself could perhaps be the same as the amount that we invested in building the port.
Therefore what?
And therefore, the government's investment is justified on the basis of simply the additional value of land in Kingston.
So if you create out of sea land that is valued at $1 billion,
yes,
and you take a $750 million infrastructure and put it on that $1 billion generation, let's call it that. Where is the net? Where's the net?
Where's the net what?
The net plus. What is the net plus of doing that?
We have expanded the city by 16 acres.
But look, we are putting a port there.
Yeah, we are putting a port there.
And we are putting a port there to take containers that may come from someplace else. There's nothing that you can point to me. There's nothing that you can point to me that we would be putting in those containers to take out of here.
There's a lot that will happen as a result of us having a port, and I'm going to speculate on those possibilities because
I'm not asking you to speculate. I'm saying you said you read all of these reports and so on and so forth.
I was talking about environmental.
You have sat at the table. You have sat at the table in government when this idea of a new port was broached. So you must know, or you ought to know, what were some of the things that they talked about. Why? In other words, the argument I have heard for a new port is that the old port is decrepit, it's broken down. But that's not a good argument because we could have spent $200 million and rehabilitate that port. Now, sir?
No, not if we have a plan for expansion. I mean, you will know that there is also a proposed investment to expand the cruise ship berth.
But why don't if we're going to have a new city at Arnesville, why don't we put the cruise ship berth there? Why don't we put it in Camden Park? Why are we clogging up Kingstown?
I'm not sure if it is a case of clogging or congestion, but I believe that Kingston is a perfectly good place to have an expanded cruise ship berth. So That's a very good reason why we are relocating the port and not redeveloping or building up or spending $200 million in a patchwork to try to say we're doing something at the current port site. At the same time, unlocking 16 acres of land in Kingston.
So you would justify then, based on that argument that you just made there, you would justify us breaking down the grammar school. You didn't think we should have revised your old school. You didn't think we should rehabilitate it as we did. We should break down the girls' high school. We should break down the Thomas Sanders High School and just build them back up, because we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't.
Stop trying to extend the
No, I'm extrapolating from your argument, though.
No, it's not an appropriate extrapolation.
How is it not so?
There may have been circumstances that would have necessitated or that could have necessitated demolition of grammar school or demolition of high school or something of that sort, or a demolition of the Kingston Preparatory School, or demolition of the Bishop's College Kingston, or demolition of St. Mary's Roman Catholic, or a demolition of a school. But those circumstances do not exist.
Oh, they don't.
For instance,
I thought the government said it was going to demolish the Thomas Sanders High School, secondary school.
That might well be a part of the plan.
That one exists.
It may exist. I'm saying that there could be circumstances that will make it necessary for you to take that course of action, and equally, it may be unnecessary to take that course of action. Depending on the nature of the problem, we have to judge, or we have to look at everything on a case-by-case basis.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
No. Juma, let me ask you this question.
You want to ask me a question?
Yeah, I mean, it goes both ways.
I am the questioner. If you feel compelled, ask me a question though. I know it may take some. You may get a chance to breathe a little.
You said something about citizens cannot yet offer a clear and definitive explanation of independence.
No, we're not going to go back there. You're not going to go back there. You're not going to do that to me tonight.
I thought that your own words would be like sweet music in your ears.
I'm not that pregnant.
I am surprised that you are bobbing and weaving and ducking, ducking these words.
What about? I don't know. Did you get a chance to listen to the Gaston Brown tirade about sandals and other foreign touristic concerns in Antigua?
No, I didn't.
That's unfortunate.
And I'm sure that you're probably looking at this as an opportunity to enlighten us about that tirade.
No. It was a useful tirade.
What I'd like to thank.
Because essentially what Gaston Brown was saying, and I'll try and send it to you. I hope I remember to send it to you. Mm-hmm. What Gaston Brown was saying is that a lot of these foreign entities, and he praised Sandals, he said it's a regional entity, he's glad to see it develop. But he said, no, they have developed, but they still want to milk these countries and don't want to live up to their end of the bargain. And he talked about ways in which where money should be coming to Antigua, they're siphoning off that money or making it difficult for the government to collect the money and so on and so forth. It was not good in light of what we have been saying here about, when I say we, I mean the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Evidently, the Sandals plant is an important plant from the standpoint that I don't know how many people are working there. I don't know how many of them are Vincentians, but to the extent that scores of Vincentians or hundreds of Vincentians, however it is, government always inflate numbers. Whatever it is, all governments, not just our government, all governments, whatever it is, that's a positive thing. That you can, more people are getting a chance to work. But I thought that based on what I just said about what Gaston Brown said, Do you have any cause to pause, or have you ever had a chance to pause as it relates to the kind of developments we do?
So I think that in a I think sandals is a very positive development for this country. I mean, investors are going to seek to obtain the best and most favorable terms. Equally, the government must always be inclined and ready to work out the best bargain for the country. And I think that the bargain between the government of St. Vincent, the Grenadines, and Sandals is a decent bargain that allows us to, as you mentioned yourself, deal with the matter of the provision of jobs for a large cross section of persons and other opportunities to provide services to Sandals in one capacity or the other. So, and I also believe that there has been what is touted as the Sandals effect, because I think that Sandals is helping to drive an increase in tourist arrivals to St. Vincent, and that is a beneficial thing from an economic standpoint. I don't think that Sandals is the be all and end all of the government of development for us. I don't think the government has that position either, because we are looking at the investment in other areas. We have Marriott that
We do, we do.
is supposed to come on stream.
Look, that was since 2014.
Yes, but good things come to those who wait. I mean, and we know that in these matters,
But no, don't misquote Lincoln, man. I know you're a student of Lincoln, but not
indeed,
to those who wait too late.
and we're not waiting too late. In the whole business of development, I have come to appreciate that 5 years could be a short time, and 8 years, 10 years could be a short time sometimes. This isn't to say that we don't try to get things as quickly as possible, but I believe that we are close to seeing ground break in relation to Marriott. Of course, we have the Holiday Inn that is on the verge of being opened. So we have a multifaceted, I would say, a range of accommodation options, hotel chains. We have the high-end chain in Sandals. We have, I suppose, a less medium range in Marriott and Holiday Inn. In Marriott, and then
They're not here yet. Maya is a pretty snazzy place.
and then we have, I mean, I was coming to the local investors who have also played their part in Myers, and we also have Hotel Alexandrina, and we have the traditional establishments which have expanded their plant. So, it's a multifaceted approach. So,
Yeah, just to let you know, that's I wanted to bring this one up. I brought the wrong one up. I just want you to know you got some support there. Blossom's child saying, hold them down, Luke. You're going great.
well, boy, against this type of attack, I take the compliment.
You're going great.
Yeah, man.
Luke, I want to ask you this though. You remember back in 2013, right? Me, you, and Camilo were made senators on the ground on the ground that there was supposed to be a transition. We are now a decade.
What are you talking about?
We are now a decade. We are now a decade on a year pass. Are you pleased with the way in which that has gone? That whole issue of transition?
Well, I think that I'm not sure what issue of transition you're talking about, but I do remember our joint appointments. I made my debut in Parliament with you. I not so long ago actually came across the newspapers which related to those appointments, and I think that we have held steady as far as the leadership of this country is concerned. The Prime Minister.
Luke, you're stonewalling me, man. You're not
But there has
answering
been. Well, I don't understand the question you're talking about. If
Okay, let me try again. Let me try again. In 2013, if you recall, even in the parliamentary session, the Prime Minister did say that this is his theme, pointing towards the future, that this is the theme of transition. You can remember the Prime Minister saying that in Parliament?
Well, we're still the team of transition, except for you, perhaps, because you've left the vote.
Yeah, I was. It is said. It is said. It is said
We are still a team of transition.
it is said. It is said that Jomo was too ambitious.
I don't know. I'm not sure what was said, but
I never expressed any
feel,
ambition except for serving the people.
feel free to return to the fold, you know.
So Luke, yes, I know. So Luke, let's go back to the last. You say you don't know anything about transition. Let me take you back to the last convention. You were there. Prime Minister walks into a chant. Caesar, Caesar. He probably for a moment thought that they were hailing him as the imperial Caesar, until it occurred to him that he was not being hailed; he was being chased out the hall. And in fact, I remember you going on. I think it was on either Boom or Hot 97, and said, "Give unto Caesar what belonged to him." Now you're coming here and stonewalling us and telling us you don't know anything about transition.
I don't want you to misrepresent my statements.
I'm not misrepresenting Luke. I'm a keen observer of what's taking place in St. Vincent.
Or for you to misrepresent the facts of convention or otherwise. You know, the bottom line is that Ralph Gonsalves is the political leader of the Unity Labour Party and the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And
but the further bottom line is that, with the exception of John Compton, when he came back for that short period and won in St. Lucia, Prime Minister Gonsalves at 78 is one of the oldest, well, not one of the oldest of political leaders in the history of post-independence Caribbean.
Well, and that might be the case. And
it might be. You don't know.
And I mean, he has stated his own views of the role he would play in politics in the future, and I think that there is respect for his position on that matter. I mean,
when you heard Prime Minister Gonsalves say that I am the youngest head in the ULP, were you offended by that?
I think there's a great amount of hyperbole in the statement, and I took it in the spirit in which it was given, as anybody should, you know.
But Luke,
but
you know, PM Gonsalves believe that he's the youngest head and shoot, right? That wasn't a hyperbole.
There's a lot of hyperbole, and I took it.
You got to give it to him, though. He has capacity.
Yeah,
he has tremendous energy.
Precisely, and that's what
he has a lot of energy. But he's stifling you guys, though. He's stifling he's stifling Camilo. He's stifling Soboto. He's stifling you, because he's not giving you I mean, after 23 years, the man, as you would see as we come to elections, he's still going to do all the feature addresses. All.
I'm not sure that you're characterizing the state of affairs correctly.
Have you seen him? The only time Camilo gets a chance to do one is if he's out or if he's sick. And I always wonder why it's Camilo and not Soboto or anybody else.
Well, Jomo, I'm not sure who you're talking about. I mean,
you're not sure. Okay.
We for instance had we've had several occasions where ministers in their own right made speeches. Just recently at the feature. Well, and fine, but if we're going to have something, for instance, like the opening or the groundbreaking for the acute referral hospital, is there a place for the Prime Minister to make the feature address?
No, the Minister of Health should make the feature address.
but the Minister of Health spoke at the event. But
I said
because
the Minister of Health should make the speech. If you're doing education, the Minister of Education should do the feature address.
well,
If you're
I
doing
mean,
culture, the Minister of Culture should do the speech address. If you're doing sports, the Minister of Sports should do the feature address.
so there are many health events for at which the Minister of Health will do the feature address and perhaps do the only address. But I hold the view that an event like the groundbreaking ceremony for the acute referral
The second groundbreaking ceremony you're talking about?
I don't know what you're talking about with the second
Yeah, there was a groundbreaking ceremony before at that same spot.
Well, there was this was the groundbreaking ceremony.
The mother of all groundbreaking.
The mother of all groundbreaking
So
ceremony.
you got $125 million. So
you have to break ground again.
Gotta break again. But look, it's sad that you laugh at that though, because that's a serious thing. I mean, if we say in 2022 that we had $50 million, $70 million to build the airport and to build the hospital, why is it that we are only now building the hospital when we go back and borrow $125 million? Don't you think that is a waste of, because now we are borrowing $27 million more than we budgeted before?
I don't think it's a waste, and I think that the delays or the length of the period that leading up to the actual commencement of work was
why was there that delay?
Out of our control. I mean, I didn't even want to use the word delay because it's just a matter of the bureaucracy associated.
Which bureaucracy? Which bureaucracy?
With World Bank procedures.
No, there was none. There was none. In fact, if you go back and look at the World Bank site, Camilo said it in a press conference on the 8th of August 2022. He said we were credited $51 million to build the acute referral hospital at Arnesville. He said that in a year we would get, which means 2023, we would get the additional $13 million. And we have also secured $20 million from the OPEC fund. So,
and in all those,
hold on, let me finish the question. So at that time, they had at least, when someone said you're credited with something, I mean, you're the numbers man, that means you have it, right? If you're credited,
well, it could mean that it has been approved. It doesn't mean that you
credited. The word doesn't mean approved. Credit does not mean approved, Luke.
But even if you have received this money, and based on my information, it's not a case where we actually received all the money that you're talking about from the World Bank. But even if we receive the money, we still have to go through certain procedures, including procedures related to consultancies associated with the World Bank, consultancies associated with the project.
Look, remember Prime Minister Gonzalez said one of the reasons why we went to Taiwan for the $125 million is because had we stayed with the World Bank, we would have to wait another year before we start constructing the hospital. We know that's not true, because I take you back on August 10th, 2022. On August 9th, Camilo had a press conference, and on August 10th, the World Bank issued a press release in which it said it had credited St. Vincent $51 million.
And who was going to build the hospital, Joe?
Huh?
Who was going to build the hospital?
Who was going to build it?
Yeah.
What do you mean? They had always said they had already decided on a contractor.
They said they had already decided on a contractor. Do you know the details about the?
Are you saying that the contractor that they have now was the same contractor before?
I am saying that even if you have money, I mean, and we ain't talking about how James Mitchell said he had money in his back pocket and so on.
Let's not do the silly politics. Let's stay with the real
even though, but you're talking about having money, and it's about the World Bank saying that they credited you this, meaning that you have money. And
No. Let's do basics here, Lou. Because
but
some people may not know. Let's do basics. Hold on. If you go to your bank and it says you were credited 51 cents, does that mean you have that 51 cents to spend?
it doesn't mean that you couldn't. If you go to the bank and you have a loan approved, the bank says that a loan has been approved, a loan of $20 million has been approved for you. It doesn't mean that you should go and begin to spend the money.
I'm not talking about a loan being approved.
But this is a loan.
Camilo said, the World Bank press release said that St. Vincent was credited 51 million US dollars. A credit is different from an approval. The approval comes and then you get the credit.
I would like you to show me what you're talking about in terms of these pronouncements by the World Bank or the Minister of Finance, and then
I quoted it in my column 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Well, I'd go back to that column
but just on the World Bank site. Go back to the World Bank site.
Fine. But what I'm saying,
2022.
But what I'm saying to you, ultimately, Jomo, is that the period of time between the conceptualization of the acute referral hospital project, which goes back into my tenure as the Minister of Health, and the actual start of the work, which we see in earnest these days, had a lot to do with the procedures and stipulations of the World Bank associated with the rollout of that project, including consultancies, which were almost interminable, and those are the simple facts. And I'm not sure what you're saying about the crediting of money here or the crediting of money there. But what I'm saying...
Camilo said it in his press.
I'm not saying that he did not say it.
No, I don't know why you're saying... No.
I'm saying whatever...
We're in the conversation because it is not...
Whatever the truth
I am not saying that. You can go back to the searchlight of August 9, 2022, in which Camilo Gonzalez, Minister of Finance, says that St. Vincent was credited with 51 million US dollars.
I will go back. But what I'm saying is that whether or not we have the money,
things out of the hat, like your 31%.
Well, that you think so? You and my 31% is out of the hat, but your information
above 60% is not out. Is not out of no hat.
But the point I'm making is that whatever the facts about the availability of money or lack thereof, the reality is that we have spent 10 or so years in the gestation period for that acute referral hospital project because we were following very stringent requirements of the World Bank. That is all.
And you know, you can't get more labor than Valerie Cozier.
I'm happy that you know that too.
I know how well. I know how well. She always comes on and chides me and think I know everything.
No, well, I mean, is there a basis for her sentiments?
No. I believe in the African proverb, he who knows that he knows little knows the most, because you go back in search of more information.
And I will search for more information as well, as you are. But yeah, I think that is the matter of the hospital as far as we might be able to take it in the course.
They did say that you were a batsman of some note, but you poke in tonight, man. You ain't playing no shots at all.
You're trying to suggest that I am a Courtney Walsh when it comes close to the close-up thing. Well, I mean, that might be your characterization of it, but I mean,
yeah, you're really poking tonight, boy. You played more shots the last time you were here.
You may characterize it in that way, but fortunately, you can offer the commentary. You can be in the match and offer the commentary at the same time, you know? leave that for the objective observers.
Yes, yeah, there are a lot of objective observers. Go back and look at the program. So look, are you ready for the next election?
Well, I wouldn't say that everything is in place, but I work diligently towards the goal of being prepared for the next elections every day. And of course, I'm doing other things as well, including building out a law practice. You know,
Yeah.
watching your good example in the court and seeing if there are any areas in which I should emulate you. You know, but building that out, keeping busy on other fronts as well, pursuing certain lines of interest. So a very very broad based approach to the career at this moment.
Are you enjoying the practice of law?
I think yes, and I enjoy it especially because of the fact that it has a representation dimension to it, and and that I think is important. A lot of the law, there's some tedious aspects of it, as you will know, especially if you are at the earliest stages when you are more or less setting up a production line, if you will.
But I thought you had a production line. Your father was in the practice for close to 50 years. No, sir?
Well, my father is more or less enjoying a comfortable retirement.
I know, but I'm saying he built the foundation upon which you stepped in.
Well,
Aren't you
true.
working out of the same office?
I'm working out of the same office, and it would have been good. It would have been good if he had not yet retired, so,
Indeed.
so he could have been there with me. I think in a mentorship.
Why did you choose law? Is law more, for me, law was expediency. I wanted to do, after I finished my master's in international relations and political economy, I wanted to do a PhD in something else. And then I said, I want to come back to St. Vincent someday. And I know the nature of these governments. I may be Dr. Jomo Sanga, but be a starving doctor. So I went to law. How do you explain your decision to go into law?
So law for you was an insurance policy against starvation.
Partly so. Partly so.
I
I
mean,
know.
Jomo, my reasons for pursuing law, I think, are quite obvious. In the first place, one of the options is that my dad has a law practice which is very old, which he started before I was born, and it was a matter of continuity in the practice. So that was a no-brainer. I also generally think that legal education is important for public life. After all, Parliament is a legislative body, and what is deliberated there has a lot to do with law, and I would therefore benefit from a thorough education in law. I think it also gives me, as I mentioned a while ago, a broader based ability to represent people in the constituency, dealing with legal matters and other matters, and you know, and of course, as you mentioned, it is a profession from which you could perhaps attain some amount of financial security, which I think is important, and freedom, which I think is important if you're going to live a hazardous life in politics, you know. And elsewhere. So I mean, a very straightforward, no-brainer decision for me.
Um, what's your views on the recent amendments to the Representation of the People's Act in Parliament? Excuse me.
Yeah, I think it's a positive development. I'm sure you might think that it comes a little bit too late. And
What's her name? I can't remember her name now. She has a book called A Day Late and a Penny Short.
well, future generations would benefit from the amendment, and I think that is
Without a
what's
doubt, I support it. I said that today. And I support it.
yeah. So you know, I mean, we have
It's sad that it comes a decade after the government was clobbered over the head by the Court of Appeal.
well, you say it's sad. It is.
Yeah, it's sad because they should have immediately moved to do the right thing. And
Well,
when you consider that in that case, where the government was so badly beaten and it has chosen not to pay, the damages and the cost. And you as a lawyer would know it's compound interest on these things. So by the time they pay me, I know I can retire easily.
Okay, sir. But yeah, to go back to the initial statement about it,
The Representation of People's Act.
the amendment, I think it's a good amendment, and it will allow for perhaps a broader based participation in politics. Which
Yeah, it definitely would. And you know, there's this case. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the case, the Freitas versus the Attorney General of Antigua, Privy Council case, in which the Privy Council lauded the very fact that, by virtue of the fact that civil servants, public employees, are some of the most educated, credentialized people in the society, that they should be given a greater amount of leeway to participate in national discourse, not just elections, but to be able to go on radio and talk, to make a comment, to write something in the newspaper, and so on and so forth. So I think it follows in that tradition.
Well, I think they could, but are they? You know, are they even beyond the business of running for public office? Do we have a broad enough cross section of persons writing letters to the editor?
Well, there's a desert, I said.
In
You are supporting my point about
I'm not.
about the desert.
I'm not supporting that at all. I'm just saying that there's.
Well, you just ask, are they doing that?
So I'm saying that there is room for a broader participation in that type of exchange.
Indeed. Why do you think there's not a broader participation now?
And by the way, Jomo, just to mention, on that note, just to mention that I'm planning to do a series of lectures soon, perhaps starting as early as next week, God's willing, on Tuesday, to focus on a couple of things. First of all, the first two prime ministers of.
I have more questions for you, though. So I don't know why you.
I know you might. I
have more questions for you.
You might need more time.
Would you like us to take a break? Would you like us to take a break?
Well, we're only 7 minutes away from the end of the program. Okay. I don't know what a break, what purpose a break would serve right now. But I'm going to do some presentations. One on the first Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Who's that?
You know who that is.
the most undemocratic Prime Minister, except for the current one.
I do not agree with that statement. I do not in any direction.
Okay. So point to the point. We have 7 more minutes. Point to the democratic bona fides of Milton Cato, and then point to the democratic bona fides of Ralph Gonsalves.
Well, I would have a whole presentation to do that next week Tuesday.
No, but give us a synopsis here now.
Everything's going according to plan. Well, they both functioned in conditions of democracy to begin with.
Oh Lord.
The vote functioned in conditions of democracy.
Would you agree that Milton Cato was probably one of the most undemocratic leaders we have had?
I'm not agreeing with that statement at
who you
all.
think was more undemocratic than Milton Cato in terms of governance?
But I'm not even going to make a pronouncement on the democratic credentials of any prime minister or any leader, because I don't think the question of democracy arises. I mean, you are hinging your views, I am sure, on the basis of some draft problematic legislation from the era of Milton Cato. And you might have a basis for making suggesting that. I'm not saying that Milton Cato was infallible. I'm not saying that he.
What about Ralph Gonsalves? What is his democratic bona fides?
That his democratic bona fides is that
I'm not talking about the periodical elections.
But what is the basis of democracy then? What is the
all of the leaders allow for periodic elections. So what is his democratic bona fides?
Well, the point I'm making is that the question of trying to distinguish all leaders on the basis of democracy does not arise, because all of them are adhering to the same democratic standards.
No. Do you think that Ralph Gonsalves narrowed the democratic space in St. Vincent, or he broadened it?
I think that he has functioned within the democratic space as it
You're
has.
not answering my question. As the leader, as the leader who controls every square inch of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, do you think that he has broadened the democratic space or he has narrowed it?
I don't think that he has done anything adverse to the democracy of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Huh? You don't think it's something when a group of citizens want to demonstrate in front of the parliament, which has historically been the place of political demonstrations, and you tell them, look, you can demonstrate, but go from Sion Hill to the roundabout at Arnesville. You don't think that is an attempt to narrow the democratic space?
I have seen many demonstrations outside of Parliament in my time. I've seen many.
I'm asking you to respond to Gonzalez's comment about where they should go march and where he directed the police to tell them to go march.
I am responding to the facts of our political reality by saying that I have not seen the Prime Minister take any measure which is inimical to the democracy of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, to democracy in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
You think there was anything? You think there's a problem with him saying that you couldn't beat drums in Kingstown? The African drums?
You couldn't beat drums in Kingstown?
Yeah.
I know that people beat drums in Kingstown.
No, in a demonstration. You know precisely what I'm talking about, Luke.
Yeah, but how does that touch and concern the fundamentals of our democracy?
Or you don't think that the beating of an African drum in a demonstration speaks to the democratic best practices if you tell people that it's banned?
And there's nothing that has banned the beating of drums in public places in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. There's nothing, so those are the facts. But you said you had some other questions. I suppose
you're a fantastic man.
You said you had some other questions. I don't know if that.
I'm asking you them. I'm asking. So you actually think that if look objectively though, let's we have had 45 years of independence. Which of the leaders? We have had Cato, we have had Mitchell, we had Annim Eustace, and we had Ralph Gonsalves. Which of those leaders you felt did more to broaden the democratic space in St. Vincent? And then you can answer conversely, which of them did more to narrow it?
Well, in the first place, if you're talking about broadening the democratic space, the attainment of independence in and of itself broadens the democracy or deepens the democracy of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So I would imagine that Milton Cato did a lot for democracy in this country. So by that.
Okay, my friend. Okay.
By that standard.
And who comes after?
I'm not getting into the business of ranking.
You don't want to rank our leaders? Why not?
Or prime ministers on their democratic credentials.
Which one do you think did most for education advancement in St. Vincent? I know you would answer this. So I give you a lollipop, as Boycott used to call it.
Well,
take a lollipop to go. I give you a lollipop to go, Luke. It's a minute.
First of all, I think that what I would say in response is I think that the Labour Party administrations have a very
which leader?
No, but I have to answer it by giving context. The Labour Party administrations have a very good record on education in this country, starting with Milton Cato. I mean, when Milton Cato came to office, there were only, and we must remember, there were only 2 government secondary schools in this country. He dramatically increased the number of secondary schools we had, including building secondary schools in rural parts of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Chumaka and Carapan and all over. So there was almost a genesis of a revolutionary situation.
You got to rub it up. We're at the top of the hour, and I don't like to go on illegally. And I know you as a lawyer wouldn't want to go on illegally either.
Well, we could appeal for more time.
No, we're not appealing. We're not
application for extension. An application for extension of time and relief from sanctions.
We don't do that on voices. Luke Brown, I want to thank you very, very, very much for coming on. You were your usual self. A lot of people think that you laugh too much, but I don't have a problem. It says nervous energy. Some people say it's nervous energy. But look, thank you for coming on. Thank you for. Please encourage some of your other members to come on. Tell them to they're not gonna die. I wouldn't, just encourage them to come on so we could have a nice conversation. Bring the voices on. Let the nation hear the voices. Next week we're gonna have Philip Jackson on, so people can look out for that next week. All of you who made comments, thank you so much for making the comments. We didn't get any calls tonight, but that's fine. I guess we are moving into a new space now where people are making comments rather than calling in. Remember, read, pay close attention, because what you don't know can kill you. Until next week, this is Jomo Thomas saying good night from Voices.
WeFM 99.9 presents Voices.
All right, Luke. Thank you so much, man.
Not just new, it's phenomenal. Voices. It's interactive and thought-provokingly different. Voices. Hosted by Jomo Thomas. We'll analyze all the issues of concern to you, the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the diaspora.
All right, Kamal. Thank you so much. Yeah, look, you stonewall more tonight, boy.
Boy, you. 1 second.